Hi everyone, Victor here again, and in today's lesson, we're going to continue with the lesson Basic Linux OS Management Skills to Have. I'm going to teach you how to recover your Linux system when it refuses to fully boot and stay at the Grub console. In Series 1 of this course, I spoke extensively on what Grub is. Grub is the Linux operating system bootloader. Without Grub, the OS cannot boot, and the Grub uses a configuration file in the location for Red Hat. It's in the location slash boot slash grub2 slash grub.tfg, and for Ubuntu, it's in the location slash boot slash grub.tfg. If this config file is lost or corrupted, it automatically means that your bootloader, which is the grub, is also corrupt. Hence, your system will not boot up properly. Grub corruption is one of the most common issues on Linux OS, and there could be a lot of reasons why Grub is corrupt. Reasons like file system corruption or boot partition corruption or failed system updates affecting Grub. It could also be installation of another OS that overwrites the bootloader. It could also be a disk or partition changes, for example, resizing, deleting, or moving partitions. It could also be powering off systems abruptly, or even the accidental deletion of grub files, which can be caused by, you know, anything. Maybe you're sleepy. If you're sleepy and you accidentally deleted the grub file, or maybe your village people caused you to delete the grub file. So there could be a lot of reasons why the grub can get corrupt. And so whenever your system refuses to boot up and shows the grub console or the grub rescue console, which is even worse than the grub console. So you can either show grub rescue, and if your system shows grub rescue, that means that's a worse case than when it just shows the grub, you know, just when you just show the grub. So whenever your system shows that, then you need to recover your bootloader. And to recover your bootloader, which is grub, you must use the rescue media, which we're going to see how to do shortly. You can either reinstall grub or reset grub, and sometimes you both reinstall and reset grub to bring your system back to shape. Reinstalling grub is typically done when the grub bootloader itself is missing or corrupted or overwritten, such as after installing a new operating system or after a disk failure or after a disk is replaced. Then you can use the command grub2 install to reinstall grub on the boot device or disk. For example, you can use the command grub2-install dev sda, ensuring that grub is correctly placed on the boot device, either BIOS systems or UEFI, and it is the first thing that loads when the system starts up. This is not usually done on a partition, but on the boot disk itself. Also, resetting grub is typically done when you have made changes to the system files that affect the boot process or menu, such as updates or installing a new kernel, modifying boot options, and etc. Then you can use the command grub2 make config dash o, which is output it2 slash boot slash grub2 slash grub.cfg to regenerate or update or reset the grub configuration file, which is grub.cfg, based on the current state of the system, including available kernels, boot options, boot menu, and etc. This command will scan your system and reflect the changes. We already used this command in series 1 when we looked at the lesson called updating the Linux kernel. So having understood what Grub is and how to reinstall and reset Grub, let's get to the action time section. So I'm on a Red Hat Enterprise Linux system. So what we're going to do is to tamper with the Grub configuration file. So I'm just going to go to that location, which is boot grub 2. And if I do ls, you can see that we have the Grub configuration file here. I have a lot of Grub configuration file here, the new one, the backup, but this is the main configuration file. So I'm just going to back this up to, so I'm going to say grub.cfg. I'm going to back it up as CFG and I can say backup new. Alright, so I can then tamper with this file. So I can either, you know, enter into the file and write nonsense into that file so that the file can be tampered with, or I can just remove that file entirely just to be able to simulate the grub issue. So I'm just going to remove the file entirely, and if I do ls, you see that that file is gone. I can also remove the old configuration. In fact, I have a lot configuration file here, but okay, let's leave it, it's fine. So what I'm going to do next is to reboot the system. Now you can see that we have the grub error here and our system is not booting up properly. The next thing we need to do is to use the rescue media to rescue our system, and we've seen how to do that in the previous lesson. So I'm just going to shut this down and make sure that the system boots up with the rescue media. So I can power this onto firmware to change the boot menu. So in the boot menu here, I can say this should boot from the rescue media, which is the ISO image, and I can save the configuration. And now you can see that the system is booting up from the rescue media, and I can do troubleshooting. I'll pick troubleshooting and then I'll pick rescue Red Hat Enterprise Linux system, just like how we've done in the previous lesson. And that is why I had to, you know, teach that previous lesson so that we can go on smoothly in this lesson now that we understand how to, manage our Linux system, how we can recover, which is, one of the basic skills you should have as a systems administrator. So I was just going to wait for the system to boot up onto the rescue mode. And now I can press 1 to continue so that the the environment is going to mount my system on /mnt/root, or I can press 3. We're going to do both. Like I said, that sometimes, this method, one option might not work. Yeah, I've seen instances where your system is so corrupt that it would not work. But we're going to pick option 1 for now, and we're going to say enter to get into a shell. And now that we're in the shell, we can make the root of our system the root of the active system. Just like you see here, if you would like to make the root of your system the root of the active system, use this command. So meaning that by the time I use this command, this becomes my root system. Chroot sysroot. Alright, so I've been able to make this location for the chroot directory. And of course, if I do df-h, you can see that my root file system is being mounted, and also the boot partition 2 is being mounted. And what we can do is to either reinstall the Grub configuration file and then reset. So whenever you reinstall the Grub configuration file, you must also reset it. And in Ubuntu, it's called update. Or we can just, reset or regenerate. When I say reset, I also mean regenerate. So we can also regenerate the Grub configuration file. And in most cases, depending on how corrupt your system is, you might have to install before you regenerate. But in most cases that I've had with issues like Grub, I usually regenerate. I don't have to reinstall, right? So I'm just going to regenerate. I'm just saying that whenever you regenerate and you're having issues, so meaning that you should then reinstall and then regenerate. And I've told you how to do that, while I was explaining. We mentioned that in the understanding the subject matter section. So to regenerate the Grub configuration file, I can just say grub2 make config, and I can put the output in that grub file, grub2, which is grub.cfg, meaning that the output should come to grub.cfg. And this is the same file we deleted, right? So it's going to regenerate the grub configuration file in that same location, and I can say enter. I can see that it's been regenerated, it's done, and I can then exit out of this shell and reboot my system. So I'm just going to wait for the system to reboot, and oops, I need to unmount this rescue media so I can just shut down or power off anyone. Normally I should shut down. So I can say power onto firmware and then make this boot from the hard drive. And I can say F10, enter, and our system is trying to boot up. I should have actually checked that file to see that that file was gone. And when we regenerated, I should have also shown it to you. But when you're doing your own practice, you can check to see that the file was gone, and you can also check to see that the file was regenerated. And then our system is trying to boot up. Now you can see that our system has booted up properly. So I can log in, say, oops, login is incorrect. Let me try again. So you see now that I can log in. I also want to mention that if you're going to install Grub, like I've said in the understanding the subject matter section, let's say you're going to install Grub, you're going to use the command grub to install. I'm saying this again and again so that you will not forget. Whenever you're reinstalling Grub, you must reinstall Grub on the disk itself and not the partition. So let's say here, you know, if you look at the boot partition here, boot is mounted on NVMeon1P1. So meaning that whenever you're reinstalling the Grub, it should be grub2 slash dev slash NVMeon1. That is the disk itself, and that is where you should reinstall the Grub, right? So what I'm going to do again is to go back to this location, and I'm going to delete this file again. See grub.cfg. If I do ls, so I can reboot again. Now you see that we have our Grub console here. So we're going to have to use the rescue media here again. So I can just power this off. I can shut this guest down, and then I can say power onto firmware to use the rescue media, and then I can say boot. Can boot from the CD-ROM F10, yes. And now I can use the rescue media to rescue my system, rescue and Red Enterprise Linux system. So now I can say skip to shell, and then I can say enter. Now that I have my shell, if I do df-h to see the file systems have been mounted, you can see that everything that is mounted here is related to the live CD, which is my ISO image. And if I also even do lsblk, you can see my all my disks that are associated to this system. All the disks that are attached to this system are being listed, and the file systems that are mounted are also being listed. So you can see that we don't have our systems. That's this system that we want to rescue. We don't have its file system being mounted here anywhere. So what we can do is to make directory. So I can just make directory. I can actually use the common directory, which is slash mnc slash sysimage or slash mnc slash sysroot, because I want to understand how this thing works. So that's why I want to make a new directory, and I'll say slash mnc slash recover. So now that I've been able to create the new directory, then I can mount the root partition on this directory. And if I do lsblk, which we've done, you can see that the root partition is this. When you're looking at this system, you see that the root partition is NVMe ON1 P2, and my boot partition is 1 gig, which is P1, and this is my system that we want to recover. So it's clearly stated here. So what we can do now is to mount the boot partition first, and to do that I can just say mount slash dev slash nb ne on1 p2, and I can mount it on slash mnt slash recover. So it's saying that this is an LVM2 member, meaning that we cannot mount we cannot mount this because it is LVM. So I can just do VGS, that's the volume group. If I do PBS, see that's the physical volume. So if I do LVS, that's the logical volume, and if I do PV display, because I don't have much disk case, I can just do PV display. You can see that the logical. Oh, this is PV. I mean LV display. LV display. Logical volume here. This is for swap. We can see that it is called dev rel root. We also did this in the previous lesson. I showed you how to be able to get your partition for root if it is LVM. So now I can mount dev rel root. So I can say mount slash dev slash rel slash root. I can mount this in mnt slash recover. So I'm having another error saying that special device does not exist, and that is because the system is not able to see the LVM LVM mark. I'm trying to call it LVM inode, not inode. It's not able to read the LVM attribute. on that device. So I can just, activate, and I say v change, activate the logical volume, hyphen AY, serial, V, VG change, VG change, CHANG. Okay, so it's now active. Now I can mount this again. So if I do df-h, you can now see that the root partition is mounted. Now that we have the root partition mounted, what we want to recover is boot, right? We want to recover our bootloader, which is the Grub. So we also need the boot partition to be mounted. And if I when I did LSBLK, you can see that for this system I want to recover, the boot partition is actually this is wrong. It's actually on NVMeON1P1, and that is not a logical volume. That is a standard partition. So this would work well in mounting it. So if I say slash dev slash NVMe ON1 P1, can mount this in slash boot. Yes, because I don't have any file system such as boot being mounted. And if I do df-h, you can now see that this has been mounted on slash boot. So what we can do now, so again, I'm going to say this because depending on what you're trying to recover, sometimes you might also need to mount some other important file systems. For example, you might need to mount slash var slash home, depending on whatever thing you're working on. And sometimes too, you would need to mount you would need to mount the already mounted file system, and in that case you must know that you need to use the bind command. We've not talked about this before, but I'm saying this so that in case when you need this, whenever you're working, you should know that if you would be using slash var slash home, you can mount that, you know. But if you're going to be using an already mounted file system, most times slash var slash home is not already mounted. But if you're going to be using an already mounted file systems that must be shared between the live ISO image and your system, you will do a bind mount. And this is what I mean. Look at this dev, for example. Now, this is a slash dev. It is an ISO mounted file. It is this live our ISO image that is using the slash dev. So let's say I also want to mount the slash dev in this system that I want to rescue. I will need to use the command mount slash slash bind. I need to bind that, and I say slash dev, right? Maybe, and I can now mount it on the mount pointer and say maybe slash mnt slash dev. And I'm saying this because I didn't mention it in the previous class. You must know this. So because we're not mounted slash dev, we've already mounted our boots and we've already mounted our root file system. And the next thing we can do is to now use the grub2 configuration file. So I can say grub2 slash make config. So I can regenerate the grub configuration file and output to slash boot, because I have the slash boot already mounted, so which is fine. So I cannot output it to slash boot, and I can say grub2, and I can say grub2, and I can say grub.cfg, right? Grub.cfg. So I'm a bit I lost my thoughts a bit because I had the call. So enter. So it's going to regenerate the grub configuration file, and now I can exit or reboot. So I need to mount this. So I'm just going to power this off, put this off, and then power this onto firmware, and then save it, take this up, save thing, and this, allow this boot up. Okay, so I'm just going to wait for this to boot up, and when it boots up, that's the end of the class. So thank you for watching. I'll see you. Okay, we're going to do that with Ubuntu here. All right. Okay, this is fine. So let's look at that of Ubuntu system. So now I can log in and I can say password. Let's put in the password. Right. So our system is fine. So let's look at that of Ubuntu. So this is my Ubuntu system. So I can just go to the location slash boot slash grub. If I do ls, you can see the grub.cfg file, and then I can either edit this file to write some nonsense so that the file can, you know, can be corrupt, or I can just remove the file. So I can just say grub.cfg to completely remove the file. So I need the sudo permission to be able to do that. The sudo password, I mean. So if I do ls, now you can see that the file is being removed. Again, don't forget to back up that file before you remove it. And now that it's been removed, so I can just do reboot. So you can see that my system has chopped to the grub shell or grub console, meaning that we need to recover the system because our bootloader is gone, our bootloader is corrupt. And to do that, like I said, you need to make use of the rescue media. So I'm just going to power off the system. I can either do power off or shutdown, then I'm going to say power on to firmware. And that's because I want to be able to put the system with the rescue media, which is the ISO image. So I can say F10 to save changes on exit. So this is going to put the system with the live ISO image. Now I can press Ctrl Alt F2 so that I can get to the single user mode. Okay, now that I'm here, I can check my system because we will need to mount the corrupt system, which the grub is corrupt, and you can see my disk here being listed. If I do the F5 finish, of course, you will see the ones that are mounted. So at the moment, we need to mount our root partition. So if I do lsblk again, I think I just need to bring this down. If I do lsblk again, you can see that when looking at this, you know that SDA is the disk, that's the data disk that we want to recover, that's the system we want to recover. SDA1 SDA2. When looking at it, you know that SDA2 is the boot partition and SDA3 is the root partition, which is LVM, of course. And another way of looking at this is if I do fdisk dash L, let me just pipe this to more so that we can check these things one by one. So I can do sudo, and when you look at it, you will see my devices here. You can see device here that says dev SDA1. My mouse, my cursor is not going there. I think that's because I'm on the console. So you can see the one that says dev SDA1 BIOS boot, dev SDA2 2 gig Linux file system, dev SDA3 Linux file system, which is 38 gig. When looking at it, you know that the SDA2 is really the boot partition, while the SDA3 is the root partition, which is LVM. And if I do LVS or I do VGS, sudo VGS, you would see that the volume group, because I just have few file systems here, so it's easier for me to read. So you can see that I have VGS, which is Ubuntu-VG. And if I do LVS, you see that the logical volume 2 is Ubuntu-LV. And I can just mount this root partition. So to do that, I can just say sudo mount, and because it is not, and because it is a logical volume, right? So I'm just going to do it straight away, which is going to be /dev slash ubuntu dash vg dash slash ubuntu dash lv. This is going to be mounted on slash mnt, and if I do df-h or lsblk, you will see that the root partition has been mounted on slash mnt, and we also need to mount the boot partition too as well. So to do that, I can just use the same command. This is going to be slash mnt slash boot. I'm going to be mounting it on slash mnt slash boot, and this is going to be slash dev slash sda2. We saw that slash boot was sda2. So if I do df-h again, you will see that slash boot 2 has been mounted, and then we can reinstall the Grub. We can restore the Grub configuration file, and I can to restore, I can make slash mnt the location of the chroot file. So I can just say chroot slash mnt sudo bang bang. Okay, so I can then use the command grub dash install and dash dev slash st. Don't forget that whenever you're reinstalling, you should reinstall on the disk device itself so that it can create the mbr. You're not reinstalling on a partition but on the disk itself. This is very important. So I can say enter. So we have an error that says grub install error cannot find a device for slash boot slash grub is, oh, is slash dev mounted. Yeah, so we also need to mount that the slash dev before we can be able to get this command, and that's because yeah. So if you look at when I did df-h here, you can see that slash dev is already mounted here, which the ISO image or the live CD is using. And for us to be able to mount slash dev with this our system that we want to repair, we need to use the bind option. So for you to be able to mount another mount point that is already mounted when you're repairing your file system or your corrupt system, you need to bind them together. So you need to use the bind option. So to do that, I'm just going to exit out of this ch root, and I'm going to say sudo, I can say mount. So I can now use the bind option because slash dev is already mounted before. So you can say slash dev now, and I can now mount this on slash mnt slash dev. So now I can need to do -h. All right. So now I can do chroot again, chroot slash mnt, and I can use the command grub install again. Let's see if this is going to install grub. Okay, so this is fine. You can see that installation finished, no error reported. Okay, so after doing the reinstall, then we need to update grub, and to do that for Ubuntu we can use the command update dash grub. Okay, then open proc. Perhaps maybe we should have mounted slash proc. We should have bound it too, but let's see. Cannot find the list. Found in RMG profile. No. Okay, for proc, try mounting slash sys. Let's probably will execute to detect the bootable partition. Okay, proc devices open field. I don't know why that is, but I believe that this should have worked. I can just confirm by doing cat slash boot slash instead of that I can just say ls slash boot slash grub slash grub.cfg. Okay, so we already have it. So it's actually been installed. Again, you can also bind proc too if you want to do that as well. So what I can do now is to exit out of the ch root and then reboot the system. Okay, so I might need to just power on the system and remove it from the CD-ROM drive so that I can boot from the hard disk. So let's just see what happens here. So I'm seeing something like failed on mounting CD-ROM. So let me just power this off. Just say power off. I always forget to use shutdown. But again, it's because it is a test environment. Usually you should do a graceful shutdown. So you should use shutdown. Now I can power on this system onto firmware. And then I can go to the boot option here. So I can take the hard drive up so that I can boot with hard drive. So it's going to boot get this up. So I can do F10 and I can do yes. So let me just expand the screen here. So you see now that it has prompted me to enter the credentials. So I can just see Victor and I can enter the credentials too as well. So now you can see that we've been able to recover the system from the Grub error. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, share, like, comment, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye for now.